Welcome to Talk Dizzy to Me, the show that brings you a comprehensive look into the complex field of dizziness. Now here are your hosts, vestibular physical therapist Dr. Abby Ross and Dr. Danielle Tolman.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Talk Dizzy to Me. My name is Dr. Abby Ross. I'm a vestibular physical therapist and neuroclinical specialist, joined today by Dr. Danielle Tolman, my co-host, also a vestibular physical therapist, and she welcomed a new baby to her family. Welcome, Dylan, our littlest vestibuloholic. By the way, just an aside here, in case anyone didn't know, Dr. Tolman is such a vestibuloholic. She also has a dog named Epley, so I want to shout him out too. Anyway, on today's show, we have a guest by the name of Karen Tartt. She's going to introduce herself, but let me just tell you, we have some exciting things in store for anyone experiencing vestibular migraine who likes to indulge in a cocktail every now and then. Karen, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. Hello, hello. I am a cocktail bartender, cocktail consultant, living in San Francisco. I've been in the alcohol industry now. This summer will be 17 years. That feels really wild to say, but I've done a number of roles. But right now, my primary focus is service and designing cocktails based on the Johns Hopkins Migraine Diet. Yeah, it's so much fun.
It's awesome. I'm so interested to hear more. And also because in today's world, I don't know, maybe you've heard of this term, but there's a lot of buzz around the word sober curious. So I feel like your specialty and your industry will be perfect for this patient population who are maybe exploring the more sober curious world or still wanting to indulge, but wanting to protect their symptoms, manage their symptoms the best way they can. Can you start by sharing a little bit about your journey with vestibular migraine? When did your symptoms start? How were you diagnosed?
So through my neurotologist now, we've been able to kind of piece together that I started experiencing symptoms in childhood. But I essentially went chronic. I this month celebrated a 6-year diagnosis anniversary, which was exciting, fun. It felt so nice to just like have a name to like all the things that I've been experiencing. Like about 18 months before that 6-year anniversary that I'm celebrating currently, I had been experiencing I couldn't describe what it was. I just felt unwell. Like I couldn't put a pin in it. Like dizziness did not come up until I like went to an ER essentially where someone was like, I think that you're experiencing vertigo. And we know that's not a diagnosis, but that was the diagnosis I went home with. So that happened a few times until I actually found, I was referred to a physical therapist who kind of put all the pieces together and literally was like, I think we have figured this out for you. And so I went through a lot of testing after that, all the common things that we hear of, why I know the name Eppley. That's so funny. But yeah, I went through a lot of trial and error after that, figuring out what works for me. The diet, migraine diet became a very big proponent of that for me, not only like professionally, but also just like lifestyle wise. That became a very big piece of my treatment pie, if you will, is managing what I'm taking in. Also, I consider within that like my environment. So I try to sort of like balance out like the way that you balance out your diet, the way that you balance out, am I getting enough liquids, electrolytes, things like that. I also try to balance like my sensory input, I guess, if you will. So like if I know that I'm going to have a very busy day of service, like I did yesterday, I worked Wednesday night. That's typically, I'm running into a busy day. People are doing their after dinner drinks. I know that the earlier part of my day is going to be quiet. It's going to be like maybe some of my lower key activities. Like I'm going to be doing billing and like maybe some meditation, maybe some walking. And maybe on a day that I don't have to do that, then that's the day that I get to go to the movies and do all the other like fun things that are a little more challenging.
I love
Yeah.
the fact that you are celebrating your diagnosis because you're absolutely right. A lot of people go through life without having their diagnosis, or it takes a long time to get there. Um, did you have any other diagnoses that kind of led you off that potential diagnosis path along the way besides vertigo? Did anybody else kind of try to put you into a box or a different corner along the way?
Oh, yeah. There were many times that my symptoms were dismissed as like, I don't want to use the wrong term here, but they were dismissed as like psychological things. And so while I want to like understand and recognize that those are certainly like issues for a lot of folks that deal with them, it didn't fit for me because the treatment didn't fit. Because at a certain point, I did start to take like medications that didn't work for me. Like we were able to kind of find out during that process that I'm very sensitive to things that mess with my serotonin levels. Like the people that get like the 2%, the 1% like reaction, like I get those and they're pretty severe and they stick with you. And so some of the medications I had to take for those actually like caused me a lot more problems than they than I guess what the intended like outcome was supposed to be
Which could
because
be
it was
very prevalent for
yeah
migraine patients, like you kind of fit that mold
yeah
of, migraine patients are very sensitive to changes in their body or even medication, so that makes sense.
yeah yeah so that was a really frustrating part of it. I know at a certain point that we were when we were putting together the pieces we figured out like that I was very deficient in vitamin D, so that became like as soon as we started treating that I started to feel a little bit better and it wasn't quite there. It was like putting together all the pieces. We figured that out. We figured out that like allergies come into a big play for me. So I'm one of those people that I had to get introduced to like the little like saline washes and never done that before. Game changer. Okay. Um, but at a certain point, I had been sort of advised to start taking things like Sudafed, which we ended up finding out were not good for my system because it was like I couldn't rest. It was like my flight was on constantly. And so after diagnosis, like I remember someone like looked at my paperwork and looked at me and they were like, and they're like, "Have you thought about maybe switching just to a regular Claritin? Like maybe that would help." So yeah, there were definitely a lot of missteps along the way, but very happy to sort of take that out. And honestly, the celebratory aspect of that, I think, just sort of comes from mindset. Like there were certainly parts and times of that, and there have been that I'm not going to lie to you, it still happens occasionally. I still get the hiccup where I'm like, oh my god, like I can't believe that I have to like switch this. I can't believe that I have to like do this, make this tweak because like it can feel like labor, it can feel like a job, but at the same point, you have to understand and remember that every change we make is a chance to get it right. And every piece of that I got because I decided to take a chance and decided that like, okay, this is worth me trying because I believe that I can make this more manageable. I believe that I can make this life as full as I want it to be, and this is a way for me to try that. So that's kind of like how I think about things like that.
You've hit on so much that I want to talk about, and we're just getting started. But one of the things is that mindset matters, right? And I feel like you, 6 years in now, are at this place where your mindset is really a productive part of your healing and your journey, not only in the management of symptoms, but also most likely in life, right? They kind of coincide. Before we get more into specifics about treatment, which you've touched on already, what would you say were the biggest challenges in both your daily life and in work when you were not well managed yet? What were you experiencing?
Daily life, a ton of isolation. As a person who went into like a very socially charged profession, initially the spending time at home, resting, like dealing with attacks, not in my nature to want to do it. So this has like certainly taught me a lot about how to spend time with myself, which is not always a bad thing. I would say work wise, when I got diagnosed, I would say that it came at a very precious, like special time for me. Like I had just come off my first season of Speed Rack. Um, Speed Rack is a cocktail competition for femme identifying bartenders that is 4 classic cocktails as quickly as you can make them, as cleanly and as accurately as you can make them. So you can be the fastest person in the room and still not make it if you're like messy and don't get your ingredients correct. So that I had just done my first competition with that. We had known that I was ill, but I didn't have a diagnosis yet. Like 2 months after that, I get diagnosed, and I'm like, what do I do? Because so many people that I'd spoke, like, I did the whole like diving into support groups. Who do I talk to? A lot of people that I'd spoken with were like, well, we changed my job. I changed a thing. It's like, well, is that a thing I need to change? It's like, I actually like feel very lucky to know that I love what I do for a living. I love it. It feels like coming home. And so, like, I knew at that moment, I was like, okay, what am I going to do? Like, how am I going to handle this? And like, coming off of that competition, like, because the way that you train for it, like, the only people around, it's very intense. The only people that kind of will really understand what you're doing around that time are the other people that compete. And so I remember sending messages to the people that I competed with, and I was like, oh my God, like, we figured out what it is. We figured out what I'm dealing with. Like, oh my God, it has a name. And like, I remember very, very clearly, um, like, one of the messages I got was, you can't stop. And it just like, it meant the world to me, because every time that I felt like I needed to, every time I just needed to take a break and just sit there and say, okay, like, you wanted this, you love this so much, you get to keep doing this, you have to keep going. It's like, you have to keep going. And so it's like those moments where like you see the people next to you that can like understand and appreciate like what you're trying to do, that like really carry you through that. And like I've met other bartenders that have vestibular migraine now, which is like, it's fun. I hate it. I'm like, "Man, I'm so sorry," but also, like, "I'm so glad to meet you." Like, "Oh my god, like, what is this like for you? Like, what are you going through?" And so, like, on one hand, it is this very nice, just sort of, like, way to be, like, open and be a lifeline to people, but on the other, it was, like, it was a struggle, I'm not gonna lie. Not everyone understood it. Not everyone still understands it. Like, I have to understand sometimes that there are people that are committed to misunderstanding. But then there are the people that are very committed to speaking up and saying, "No, you belong here. You have a space here. You have a voice here."
It's a
Yeah.
very complex diagnosis, especially because it is so individualized from person to person. So I'd imagine with this high simulation job, multitasking, busy visual environment, that it might have been tough to kind of figure out how to manage that in the beginning. But what sort of things have you figured out to kind of get you through working with diminishing your symptoms or keeping yourself in check? Like, what are some things that you can do while you're at work to keep yourself feeling pretty good?
A lot of trial and error will figure that out for you. I have been very lucky to find out through various positions I've been in that the things that I require. So, like, for example, the space that I work in currently, we have ceiling fans, which used to be sort of a disqualifier for me because I don't like the motion ahead of me. But I was able to figure out that I dislike that when there are lights above the ceiling fan. So there are no lights above the ceiling fan where I work. And so, like, environmentally speaking, I have control over the lighting, the volume of music. Like, do those have to stay within the what a business requires? Yes. But at the same point, it's like I don't work around strobing situations. Like, the people that come into the bar that I work at, also, I will say this, I work in a historic queer neighborhood in San Francisco, the Castro, and it's a very accepting neighborhood. So like, even on a moment where I'm having like 4 drinks in front of me and I'm, like, making them and I can't remember this one. I have a moment of, like, brain fog, or just, like, I'm talking to someone and it's, like, it just slips me. I am very lucky, I feel like, to at least be humble enough to be quick-witted and make a joke about, like, can we just, like, revisit, like, what you," because I was doing all these other things and it just, like, it never came back to me. Sorry, I tried. And so, I will say this, like, the people that come into the spaces that I work are very accepting, understanding, and once you explain it, I feel like most people are just willing to give you the grace because everyone is dealing with something. And so, like, even the moments like last night, I had to deal with, there's a bike rack outside of where I work, like one of those back lift situations. I'm literally in vestibular rehab right now to relearn how to ride a bike. I don't know how the lights on those things work. So I literally was like, "Hey, can someone please go turn that off for me?" Because it's in my, like, it wasn't bothering just me, but I was like, "Hey, it's like actually really bothering me." And someone just went out and took care of it. Come back in the bar, claps from everyone. Like, it's really just that easy. Like, you can turn it into like, you can turn it into something fun. There's always an opportunity to turn something into fun.
Well, what you're doing also, knowingly or unknowingly, is spreading awareness about vestibular dysfunction, which is one of our main missions here at Balancing Act and Talk Dizzy to Me. So I think that's such a beautiful space to be able to do it in. Um, Two things that I thought of in your commentary there. One, I went to a restaurant with my parents a few nights ago, and same thing. There was a light above a fan, and I was like, I can't sit here. And my dad was like, I can't sit here. And my mom said the same thing. And we watched different people sit at the table and get up and then, request to be moved. So interestingly, in situations like that where it's that strobing type of sensation, perhaps you have migraine or don't have migraine, but it certainly is an overstimulation or can add to the overstimulation. So, something to consider: you're building a house, you're going to a restaurant, scope out the fans, where the lights are. The other thing that I love in terms of your spreading awareness is I cannot think of a better place to do it than in a bar setting, because people are there to socialize, most people anyway. They're there to meet people, to talk. And what better way to spread awareness and teach people about vestibular dysfunction? And I guarantee you, you've probably met someone else through the industry, not just the other bartenders that you've met, but customers that you've met that have said, "Oh, my mom has that," or "My grandma has vertigo," or whoever. So, really, such a beautiful way to spread awareness. And I commend you for that. I also love how accepting the people around you are, because that makes a huge difference. The understanding and the acceptance, feeling like you belong, feeling like, you are understood, and it's okay to be vulnerable and open about what you're experiencing. Really, really great things. Are there other things within that type of environment that you've had to adjust before? For example, some things that I can think of are maybe the direction that your workspace is in. If it's in a high traffic area, or even noise from people, is there a way to control that?
Yeah, so that's an excellent question. So, like, the noise from people can get kind of, like, overwhelming, especially people know your name. Um, there's always sort of a strategic way to move around that, and so, like, we're very lucky within, like, bartending, you can move around. You're supposed to move around. You're not gonna get any work done if you don't move around, and so you can kind of strategically, if the cards play out in your favor, like, dose yourself with that. So, like, the space that I work in, all of my backup materials are in the office where it is quieter. And so, like, if it's a very, very busy day, I'll maybe, like, think to myself, "Okay, like, I'm gonna stack my tasks for the moment. Okay, so I know that I need to get ice. I know that I also need to go replenish, like, this particular vodka. So, it's very loud right now. I'm gonna give myself maybe, like, a 15-minute sort of cutoff, and at that 15-minute, I'm gonna mentally say to myself, okay, like, I'm just gonna tell everyone, okay, like, I'm gonna be back. I'm gonna go grab some ice. I'm just gonna mentally take a second to just grab ice, but also, like, relax and just sort of take in the quiet for a second. And so there's certainly ways around that. If you can figure that out, it's like or it's we use the term like mise en place in service, is like everything has its place. Typically, that's used for like when you set up your garnish tray, like your tools, all your things. I sort of use that. I have mentally started using that for like the tasks that I do like in my life. So like mise en place, everything has its place. So like I know if I'm going through a shift, what I'm typically going to do. I've been doing this for long enough to know like it's a Friday. I'm gonna probably have to get like 3 to 4 buckets of ice. So I know like that's 3 to 4 like mini breaks I get to take on a very busy day. That's gonna work out really nicely for me. So it's also kind of like the mental reframing of like how to make that work for you. And there are moments where I just kind of am like, all right, well, it's just going to be like this for a second. And the only way to get through it is to go through it. So it's not always perfect. And yeah.
Do your coworkers, have they caught on to the days that you're feeling good or days that you're not feeling good? And are they helpful in terms of getting you through a shift or recognizing when you're not having a great day?
hmm So most of my shifts are solo because the spot that I work at is pretty small, which also helps out with the noise. I'm very, very lucky to currently have coworkers that are not only incredibly understanding, but like also really celebratory. Like we're encouraged where I work to like really embrace our individuality. And so for me, that just became one of the aspects. In fact, like when I joined the team, that became like part of like one of the ways they introduced me is that this is Karen and she makes migraine friendly cocktails. And so like and that to me was a huge deal because people do sort of follow me. I'm very lucky with that. I'm very lucky to like find people that are interested in the work that I do and like interested in the drinks that I like to make. And so like it became important for people to be able to find me. And so my coworkers talk about it. I'm very lucky. I would say like the ones that I see the most, I feel like have picked up on it and are kind enough to like not make a big deal out of it when I need a little extra help. But there have definitely been moments where I'm like, hey, like we're doing like a shift change situation or something. I'm like, I'm just moving a little bit slow today. And it's like never a big deal, which is honestly so great on it. Yeah.
So, all around, what I'm hearing is that you have surrounded yourself in an environment that works well for you. And I imagine people every day, I mean, patients that I see, one of their biggest stressors is their work environment. Maybe they're on a leave right now, but they're stressed about going back to that stock market floor or that busy school or whatever the situation is. And I love that you found an environment that works well for you, but also then you tweak the environment to work well for you. So maybe the situation isn't perfect. Maybe the music is a little bit too loud or the people are calling your name every which way on a Friday night, but you have found ways to adapt to the environment and make the environment also adapt to you. Really, really good points to take away from there, not just in the bar, but elsewhere. I love that. Let's talk a little bit more. You touched on this earlier, but in terms of treatment pie, so maybe identify specifically what triggers you've had and then what you found most successful in terms of your treatment pie overall.
So the biggest triggers for me ended up being things like not getting enough sleep, diet, stress, moving lights. Moving lights became a big thing. Most beneficial things that helped me out with that were figuring out diet triggers, coming up with good sleep hygiene. Like, what was that term to me ever before this? That was never a thing that I'd ever heard, because that was new to me. Figuring out new techniques with that. Also, vestibular rehab. That became a very big proponent because I knew when I wanted to keep bartending that I was going to have to figure out workarounds. 6 years ago, I was 11 years into the alcohol industry, so I'd been bartending for about 9 of that. And so I'd had 9 years of experience working this way, and so I had to just sort of it was almost like being reborn. It was just like, "Okay, I'm at this point. I have all this knowledge. I have this experience," but it's like I had to relearn how to do everything. And so I remember walking into this and I telling them like all the work I'd done. I'm figuring out my diet. I'm trying to get on medications. That was like always an uphill battle for everyone to figure out, the proper medication and whatnot. But I remember walking in and telling them, it was like, this is what I do. This is what I want to do. You're going to want to tell me to stop, but I'm not going to. And I remember like very clearly, they kind of looked me up and down and, the physical therapist I had, her name's Dr. Chara Rodriguez. She was like, okay. And she never questioned it after that ever. She worked with me on a lot of things like stance. So that became like my posture became a very, very big thing. Like I had to realign sort of how I stood, how I walked, how I stood at a well, how I sit even. Um, so those all became very big points. And also like figuring out like how to speak up for myself when I'm in an environment that is triggering became like a big deal. Like she had to talk me through that, which seems like the weirdest part of it, but it was just like there were moments where I knew that I was in a space that wasn't good for me, but I didn't know how to say it. And so she walked me through this thing and she told me, she's like, it's not weird if it helps you do the thing. Like always do the thing.
How has your vestibular therapy evolved over the years? So,
Mm,
where you start can be very foundational, very simple, but very easily triggering. And then, I have a lot of these patients that come back for tune-ups when they need them here and there, but their presentation and their exercises and their approach to care is always a little different each time. So, at this point in time, what are some things that you're working on currently
mhm.
in terms of vestibular rehab?
Mm. So I just started another round. I'm in for a tune-up. I had some goals that I really, really wanted to work on. I would love to be able to drive again. I decided to give that up when I moved to San Francisco. So I moved to San Francisco a little bit over 3 years ago to be in a clinical trial for Emgality to treat vestibular migraine. I also wanted to work on hiking. I live in a very beautiful area of Northern California. I am able to go on short hikes. The biggest thing for me is going downhill. I
Mhm.
don't mind going uphill. That's fine. That's totally cool. Going downhill, my all the alarm bells go off. It's like, "Oh, how close are you? How far are you? Oh my god, what's happening? I don't know." Like, ah! So that's something that I'd really love to work on because I want to take in more of the outside. I'm definitely a city girly. Um, Learning how to use public transit here became a big deal. That was something I kind of like did the learning curve on. I did one thing at a time. First, I did the train. I got to where I felt like I was okay with that. Then I got through the bus system. The bus system was the most challenging because I'm not the only person that tells you this. My navigation system isn't the best. And so the bus was where I got lost the most, but also where I learned how to navigate, when I'm not feeling like the most centered, I suppose. Ferries are new because I live in Northern California. Ferries are so fun once you get over it. It's like a 30-minute ride, but I'm not going to lie to you. The first couple times I did it, I was like, I don't like it. Yeah. The first time I did it, I was going across the bay to help out with a spirits judging competition. So like in my mind, there was this cool, like very motivating thing I'd never done before. And I knew it was going to be fun. And I was going to be able to nerd out with all these people that are into booze, no booze, like to drink good booze. But I remember like being like waiting for the ferry, just being like, all right, okay, it's your first time. Don't blow it. And there ended up being like one other person that was going to the competition on the ferry with me. And like, thankfully it was totally fine because I was just like,
Well, aside from anxiety producing, just the environment, when I was working up in the DC, Maryland, Virginia area, some of those metro stations are really far underground. You've got these extremely long escalators that have to go underground. And then once you're underneath there, you've got all these trains going by. It can be really overwhelming for some people. And I've actually had patients who kind of got stuck on those trains or on those metros. They'd get on and they're like, I can't bring myself to get up and get off. And they end up riding it for a while until they can finally bring themselves together to get off. So tackling public transportation is huge. Like, that's really great.
oh yeah. I've definitely like the getting stuck thing is a humbling moment, but I feel like it's happened to almost every homie I talk to that has a vestibular issue. It's just I would say that most people, I've never met anyone unkind in that situation. I'm very lucky. I would say that. Like, I feel like most people on public transit are willing to help a stranger if you're lost or you're like, hey, I really need that seat. Like, I don't know what the train is like in other situations, but in San Francisco, we have these like side seats. Like they don't sit like the sideways motion is not my favorite. So like I sit in the seats that are reserved for like disabled folks because they're sideways and it's like a lot easier for me to do. But like there are moments I call it the jump seat. Like if you've ever been on a plane, like the seats the flight attendants in are called the jump seat. So I call it a jump seat. And so sometimes I've had to ask them like, hey, like I know that and there's always that moment where like I know that I look like I don't need it. I know. I'm like, there's this moment where I'm like, oh my God, please don't judge me because I look like I don't need this, but I do. I swear I need this. Like, I'm like, I literally, but I've never been met with unkindness in that, luckily. So
you're speaking to the invisibility of these types of presentations and conditions. And I think that is such another relatable thing for people to hear that, you might have those thoughts like, I swear, please don't judge me. I do need this. This will help me. This right now, if I can make it through this bus or this train or this whatever and not provoke my symptoms, I can make it through my shift at work kind of thing.
yeah.
Go over
I also have paratransit.
What is that?
So paratransit goes through most, I would say most metropolitan cities have it's called different things in different areas, but in San Francisco, paratransit is a public transportation system for folks that need extra aid. And so I have what's called a conditional clearance where I wanted conditional because I didn't want to have it all the time, and you don't have to, but like I wanted to have it when I needed it. So like when I have to go across the bay to Berkeley to see my neurologist, I'll schedule a paratransit ride. They'll come pick me up. And they have notes on me. So like it's a pretty lengthy interview process, but it's worth it. It's like it's almost like when you're doing intake with like a new specialist, because they get in there and they ask you all sorts of questions, but it honestly is to help you. So like when I've done brand tastings before where I have to carry a big bag of booze with me, it's a rolling bag, maybe not my favorite to do. Maybe shouldn't be doing that for like maybe more than a few blocks. I've scheduled paratransit and it's like in my notes that if I have a bag with wheels, I need help. And they're always kind. And every time I go in there, if I'm alone, because you're not allowed to play music, which is because there's other people in there that may have a sensory issue. Every time I go in there, I ask them if I can play the Grand Theft Auto soundtrack because it cracks me up. And I'm like, drive it like you stole it.
Right? Well, this is such a great tool. I don't know if it's called the same in other cities or if they have a similar program like that, but how amazing and how
Mhm.
much more accessible is your city because of something like that. Really cool stuff.
You can have it transferred.
Oh, to another city?
I also have clearance in San Diego, DC. I think there was another. Oh, I have East Bay clearance also. You call them and you have it faxed. When I went to DC last year, I called ahead to their metro line and theirs is a text line. They messed up my ride from my airport to my hotel, so they sent a Lyft to come get me.
Wow. I mean, this is
Yeah.
cool. In fact, it's reminding me, Danny, when I met you, we were in the DC area for a combined sections meeting for physical therapy. And on that trip, actually, there was an older woman who was trying to get up the escalator from the train and she got stuck. She could not bring herself to take the step onto the escalator. And I remember it was like the highlight of my trip because I went into full blown, like, I'm a vestibular therapist mode and helped her get on the escalator. But what a perfect resource for someone like that. Amazing. Hey guys, it's Abby here. Unclench your jaw, relax your shoulders, take a nice deep breath. Doesn't that feel better? Thank you so much for listening to Talk Dizzy to Me. One of our missions here at Balancing Act Rehab is to spread awareness about vestibular dysfunction, and the best way to do that is with your help. We'd be so grateful if you took a moment to subscribe, review, and share our show with someone you think would benefit from hearing our conversations. Let's get back to it. Are there any things that surprise you? Maybe some unconventional things. Something you said earlier was sleep hygiene, and I was imagining, man, in the bartending industry, sleep hygiene must be tough. What kinds of workarounds have you established to improve that in your life?
It's been a lot of restructuring the way that I live my day. So, like, because I've been doing this for so long, we sort of ascertained that I've been living my day kind of backwards. Most people like get up, breakfast, go to work, do your thing, come home, relax, and then go to bed. Because because I have tended to work later in the day or at night, typically, I'll get up. I call it a slow, quiet morning. I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna be here doing my thing, and then I would structure. Typically, what I would do was like go to work, do the thing, and come home, just jacked up, all this energy, all this stuff, and I had to unlearn how to do that. And so it became a lot of like, okay, like I'm gonna restructure this in a way that like makes sense to me. It becomes an interesting conversation with folks in my line of work that haven't maybe considered that for themselves yet. The bar industry is catching up with that. Like health and wellness are definitely topics that are, I don't want to say popular, but they come up a lot now, which is, I think, great. I had hoped after we all dealt with what we dealt with in like the pandemic quarantine situation that would be a longer conversation because a lot of people saw like burnout, work fatigue, like during that time for folks that were still going to work in service industry. And so I feel like that's maybe where that topic came up. And so now when I bring this conversation up, like, oh, sleep hygiene, it's like, what does that mean? I didn't know what that meant before. And so when I talk to folks that I'm, and work, oh, did you sleep well? Did you not sleep well? It's like, okay, like, when are you seeing the daylight? Like, do I have the right pillow? That became a thing that especially, this last year, I received another diagnosis. I I now have TMJ-RA, which I had long suspected I had issues with my jaw, TMJ. I did not know that it could progress to RA, so that was news to me. But, basically, like, making sure you have the correct pillows, making sure you have the correct posture. I'm a side sleeper. I like 3 points of contact because it makes me feel safer when I go to sleep. I have tried to retrain myself to sleep on my back so hard, but, like, it gives me that, like, drop feeling that I feel like a lot of people get. Um, so, yeah, the sleep hygiene thing became a big deal. It's like posture, when are you sleeping? How much sleep are you getting? How many times am I waking up? When am I waking up? That became a big key, because I figured out very quickly that, like, if I was waking up more than once a night, my stress was too high, and that would be like, "Oh, okay, you need to back off."
That's a great way of looking at and tracking everything and being aware of those triggers and how to kind of restructure everything to address that. So that's amazing to hear. I like that 3 point of contact idea too. That makes perfect sense. That's really great. Now, I kind of want to shift gears a little bit because I'm very excited to talk about your expertise in migraine-friendly cocktails. As somebody who gets migraines from alcohol myself, I would love to hear a little bit about the things that you have found are common ingredients that are triggering for migraines in a lot of these different cocktails. So let's start with those triggers. What are some
Yeah,
ingredients that trigger?
yeah. The biggest things, well, alcohol, if you are choosing to imbibe, the biggest things in there are gonna be aged spirits and things, that are fortified, things that are like liqueurs. You go through these secondary processes with a lot of those that add, like, artificial color, or there could just be an infusion with a whole fresh ingredient that, is triggering or problematic. Like, one of the biggest things I don't use is citrus. Citrus became a big issue because it's one of my biggest triggers. We figured out pretty early on. I was living in a daiquiri city then too. My DAC name was Dr. Jones. Like you get a DAC name like once you like get really good at it. But at that time we figured out that like I couldn't drink daiquiris not because the rum, it was the lime. Once I started playing around with like making a lime substitute, it became a little bit easier. So within that, it's like the discussion becomes, okay, like what are we adding to it? Fortified things, fortified wines. It You can make your own substitute. So basically what I do is I take a lot of the fun food science stuff that we use to make fun cocktails that you see like on your menus, and then I just kind of medically tweak them a little bit. So like what we call like if you go to like your neighborhood cocktail bar and you see like a drink that has like something something cordial, and it's not a cordial that comes out of a bottle. It's not like an elderflower situation. It's something they made themselves. Like you can take that and make your own flavor and build that way. Um, I know people that have opposite triggers as me also. Like I'm very lucky to be able to imbibe. I'm a gin martini girly, 2 olives, no twist. That's just fine for me. But then I know people who can't imbibe, but can drink all the Arnold Palmer's lemonades they want all day long. Like it's not fair, but like, yeah. So those are kind of the things that I work with. The biggest thing with that for me right now is I'm hoping to get enough research together to more clearly define like what a migraine friendly spirit is. Like what are the parameters of that? We know from text that were written when Migraine Diet was released that Blanco tequila and vodka are the biggest recommendations for that. And we know that it's because they're both low in conagers. So conagers are like particles that are chemically present essentially without getting too nerdy in alcohol that give them character. So when you put things into oak, like that heavy scotch that's, been in oak for like 12, 15 years, very high in conagers because that's what it's been doing as it's been sitting in the oak. And so I believe that there are all these other spirits that were not included that I think actually fit the spectrum of what that could be beautifully. So we look at things like mezcal. Mezcal became a very big sort of like proponent in this argument for me because one, it received its like legal definition like 2 years after the Migraine Diet was released. So it was like the timeline was just off. It's produced in a very similar way. And a lot of these spirits also are legally protected. Like the ways they are produced are legally protected. So the other things I think that should be included, or I'm hoping to be able to like provide enough evidence to include, because I also like when I was doing a lot of these studies, I also had to realize that I'm learning how to put together data. I'm a bartender. I'm a creative person. You want to make a really great summer menu? Yes. This feels like putting together like the research paper before that. So like it's fun. Is it serving a purpose? It's not it's very much a learning curve for me. So like putting together this data is huge, but I'm hoping to be able to include spirits like cachaça, also legally protected, unable to be aged in its silver form. I also think that rum agricole, also legally protected, like could fit. Aquavit, very close to gin, just a different spirit, caraway seed instead of juniper, I think also fits when it's unaged. But when you get down to things like that, you also get down to legalities because certain countries that produce that require an aging, some don't. You know what I mean? So like the law can help you in some of those situations. It's just like it gets down to like figuring out like what the specifications for each one are.
I love your passion about this. I'm learning something new every sentence you speak. So this is really, really cool. And I love what you said. You said something about how things that trigger you, someone else could have the opposite trigger. So it is still very individualized in figuring out what works for you and what doesn't work for you. And I just want to tease something here. We are going to also release another video in which Karen takes us through one of her favorite recipes. We're going to make a migraine-friendly cocktail, have a little social experiment, and have a little fun with it. So check out the show notes of this show for a link to that show coming up. Now, lastly, do you have any other tips for other people in the migraine world who want to enjoy a social night, a girls' night, trivia night, whatever it is, and maybe have a cocktail or two on hand with them? What kind of tips do you have for them? What's your takeaways?
I would say find a space that you feel comfortable in. Find a space that's accepting of you. I think for me, when I get this like bird's eye view of like being able to give service, but also getting service. I believe I'm a big proponent of like, if you want to make beautiful things for other people, you should believe you deserve them too. And so when I go out and I observe service, like I like to pay attention to what feels good to me. And so I would say, find a place that feels good to you. Find a place where you feel accepted. Find a place where if you need to ask for that drink with a different ingredient, if you need to ask how that drink is made, because house-made ingredients can hide a lot of things. Like there are certain places I go that I know I can't have olives because they marinate them with citrus peels. It's just as easy as like feeling comfortable enough to ask the question. If you're going to a place and someone's like not kind to you, if you ask that question, that's just not your place. And I hate to say that, but it's also like finding the people that are excited by that. It's like I also am a very big proponent of Google Photos. Like if I haven't been to a space before and I don't know what the environment is like, people love to post a photo of like whatever, and you can get a lot. You get like a chalkboard menu. You can kind of look at this. Oh, there's a ceiling fan. There's like a light situation. There's a thing. Google Photos is not a bad deal. Also, call ahead. Don't be afraid to ask. Service people people that get into service that are lifers that actually like really enjoy it and find satisfaction in what they do. Like love giving people what they need. If you take the time to ask and you take the time to say like, this is a sincere thing, this is why I need it. Like you don't have to say why, but like, I guess for some people it's helpful to understand the why. So they'll, maybe be more mindful of that in the future. But like, yeah, always ask, because people that are in service, that's what we're here for.
Now, where can people find you if they want to get some more information about you or some of your cocktails? Where are some places that people can find you online?
So I am primarily operating off of I have a website, Clear Spirit and Mind. That's the name of my consulting firm. I don't post there because it's just my website for that. I have my Instagram. I'm Instagramless_Karen. I also bartend. I take service 3 days a week at a spot called Last Call in the Castro in San Francisco. We describe that as like, I call it like a neighborhood cocktail bar. It very much feels like your living room. It's very cozy. We have a fireplace, everything in there is adjustable. Which is why people should always be comfortable asking. Like in the middle of service there, like I will tell you, like vestibular aside, like just in getting to know community and like seeing people, like I've just met people, so many cool people who've shared with me, like this made me feel better. So it's like having the conversation and like being open about it. And even if you find, I don't know, like I feel like maybe being open about that helps people feel like they can talk about it too. So it's like if you can find someone who speaks about that in their service, like when I talk to someone who needs an adjustment in their ingredients, I will often bring up my own. I'll say like, oh, no problem. Like I know I do this for a living and I don't drink blah, 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 or whatever, just to try to minimize it. If you can find those people, lean into it and get to know them, like make sure that they get to know your name. I would say that's the biggest thing. Make sure they get to know your name and they know who you are, because those are going to be the people that talk about you. Because we do talk about you when you're not at the bar. We do talk about you. And so like in those instances, when things like that come up, it may be a note where like I'll talk to a coworker and say like, hey, when this person comes in, this is a thing they like. And it could be as simple as translating what their favorite drink is. They like their martini 5-1 with a twist. It could be as simple as they like to have a seat by the fireplace because their hands get really cold. So yeah, it's just finding those spaces.
Wow. My takeaway from this episode is that we need a vestibular meetup at Last Call in San Francisco behind the bar. It was such a
One
pleasure.
day. I have done like a pop-up class situation before. I did one last year. I'm hoping to do one this year. Um, yeah. So we'll see.
Well, keep us posted. We'd be happy to share whatever information or events you have coming up. Audience, thank you as always for listening, and make sure you check out our social happy hour where Karen talks us through how to make a migraine-friendly cocktail.
Thanks so much.
This podcast is provided for informational purposes only and is not intended as a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified healthcare provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition.
The content of this podcast is based on general knowledge and information available up until the recording of this specific episode. Medical knowledge and practices may evolve over time, and new information may emerge that could change the understanding or treatment of vestibular dysfunction. It is important to consult a qualified healthcare professional for the most up-to-date and personalized advice. The information provided in this podcast is meant to complement, not replace, the relationship that exists between a patient and their healthcare provider. It is intended to empower patients with knowledge about vestibular dysfunction and its management, but individual cases may vary, and treatment approaches should be tailored to each patient's unique circumstances. By listening to this podcast, you acknowledge and agree to the terms of this medical disclaimer. The organizers, presenters, and creators of this podcast are not liable for any actions or decisions taken by individuals based on the information presented herein. Always consult with a qualified healthcare provider for medical advice and treatment.